All right. Hello, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what part of the world you are in. I do hope you like my Igbo outfit. It's part of my identity, and it was fun putting it on again today. Today, we're going to tell a few airy stories. But before then, we're going to do a rehash of the last 5 days. So I'd like you to kind of like tell us what your experience has been. If you joined us live or if you watched those videos after the fact. So let me start by recounting a story I heard from a friend of mine while I worked with him in Abuja. He had been woken up in the middle of the night, rattled or stirred by a rattling noise from his window. A rattling noise, you know, like something was flipping at the window side. I mean, it was dark and he wasn't too sure what it is. And being a Christian, he stood up and began to pray, began to address whichever entity was stirring him up that night, middle of the night. He couldn't explain it. Was it African science? Was it a demon? What was it? What was it that was, you know, scaring him so badly? He was very familiar with how these, what we may call remote missiles could be shot from different parts of the world to wherever you are, so to speak, like we say it in Africa. After the break, we shall find out a bit what it is that he was experiencing and talk about it a bit after we've gone through today's core lesson. So I want you to hang in there. We'll be back in a minute. Many years ago, while I was working in Abuja, a friend of mine who was also a colleague, Ayo by name, told me the story of an encounter he had in the middle of the night. It was a scary story. He had been woken up by a rattling noise coming from the side of his window. And he was familiar with entities that could materialize in a physical world from wherever they came from to interrupt or intervene or intercept the progress of our lives. So he decided to switch to spiritual gear. He spent quite a bit of time, you know, addressing the entity, casting, binding, rebuking, and so forth. Whatever it was that was rattling that window. And he probably in his mind was this some kind of remote control from his hometown? Was it African science? Was it a demonic entity? Who sent it? Who did he need to send it back to? Because there's the practice of sending things back, you know, to where they came from. And all that probably was going on through his mind as he was praying intensely, casting and binding and rebuking, unearthing, destroying, diminishing, disastering, and so forth. So after I had done that for some time, he got emboldened to actually check what it was. And when he opened up the curtain, he discovered that he had left his window slightly open, which is not something he typically did. And the wind from outside was actually causing a particular part of the window to make a rattling noise at the window. Another story about cats, and if you are used to cats, you will probably be familiar with this story, depending on which part of the world you are from or which culture you are from. For some, cats are very nice animals. For some, cats are symbols of some other, realities. And we used to grow up with a lot of cats in my house. And I'm going to tell you our experience with these cats for quite a few years and share with you on that. But I want to pause on this topic and switch back a bit, recap the last 4 days where we've been talking about our partners or talking with our partners. In talking with our partners, we went through quite a few insightful topics that were derived from our books, some of which I unboxed yesterday. And we talked about the fact that there's a need for us to back these people with physical money in our physical world, for them to do some huge good work in our generation. And you would remember the interview we had on Thursday, where Nuruddin Latte actually told us about a girl who thought that her menstrual cramps were a spiritual experience, but it so happened that we can actually solve the problem with physical money, right? A little bit of physical money, the cost of coffee, 25 cedis, 20 cedis, 15 cedis, and a little bit of education around women's menstrual health. So I want to remind you of the purpose of these 5 days. I want to recount that we are not just being online. We are not just creating content. We are calling attention to the assignment of these amazing individuals who have given their lives, given their time, right? Time's life, to the commitments, the visions, the passions of their hearts, to make sure that those that they can help, they will be able to actually help them. They need you to do that. So in this particular session, I'm just going to, before going back to the story about the occult, about demonic powers, I'm going to do a recap of the topics we entered into those sessions with. And I hope that it will be a good reminder for you on the philosophy of our lives. And maybe there are a few things you will pick up from there. And maybe you'll decide to also buy or get a copy of our books through donation. In your world, people are used to fighting for resources like oil or minerals or land. But when you have access to the vastness of space, you realize there is only one resource worth fighting for or worth fighting over: more time. Time is the single most precious commodity in the universe. This wisdom was delivered by Kalik Abrasax, a 14,000-year-old elite from Jupiter. If you don't know who she is, you probably should see the 2015 movie Jupiter Rising. We shared this thought on Wednesday, the 1st of October. And we asked the question, what are you struggling for on the earth? What are you reaching for? What is your utmost priority, right? We talked about the fact that $1 million is not sufficient. $1 million is not sufficient at all. And birthdays are a great time to reflect on this, to reflect on time. The scripture says, teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. Now, if I give you $1 million, you could exhaust it in 1,000,000 hours. There are so many ways to finish $1 million in 1,000,000 hours. But if I gave you 1,000,000 years, you could recover it many times over if you're focused on the right thing. And there are many things in our lives that we wish we could recover. We simply cannot. We don't have enough time. Time is the issue. The question becomes, what can we do with the time we have left? What is consuming our time? What are we doing with our time? Earlier in September, there was the scare of the rapture, the end of the world, the uptake of the church, and the fact that things were just going to stop as we know it. Now, if I was certain that the world as we know it would end this year, I would liquidate standing investments, stop my children from schooling, abandon my career and business, forget about impacting the next generation, and completely ignore the politics or development conversations in my society. In other words, when we realize that we have limited time, we focus on what is most important. We deal with priorities by isolating purpose. What constitutes a useful purpose? What is useful for us to be doing with our lives? Can we proactively prioritize? In the Strategy Club, we deal with this using something we call the FIRA cycle. The FIRA cycle. Focus. Identify suitable elements that deserve your attention. Immersion. Acquire depth in this finite set of activities. When I say finite, 3 to 5 core activities that are consuming your time. Repetition. Maintain your focus for a sustained period. That sustained period requires some resilience, some consistency, some grit, right? Over that period of time, you will accumulate something. You move to accumulation, accumulate value until you select the next focus cycle. So we're not saying just keep doing what you do forever and ever. We're just saying do it long enough for you to achieve a state of expertise that allows you to begin to generate value. We call it the FIRA cycle. Talk about setting yourself on fire. 10,000 hours is the magic number of great. That came from Malcolm Gladwell in The Outliers of 2008, I believe. The meaning behind this is simple. To be considered elite and truly experienced within a certain craft, you must have practiced it for 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours. Think about that for a moment. Think about that for a brief moment. Let me pause a bit and come back to this. All right. So, on day 2, we talked about rebirth. We asked ourselves, what if we could do this again? This was October the 2nd, and I recounted our lives. We had a few interesting pastimes when we were growing up as children in Satellite Town, Nigeria. Some of those interests included playing video games, drawing comic books, and writing short stories. They say that one tends to show what he will eventually become, right, through their childhood fantasies. That may be true. I remember a cartoon character I created called Bionic Woman. We did a recreation of this Bionic Woman on Canva just last week. There were quite a few others, and I also remember the board game we created. It didn't look like this, But this is a good representation because we basically copy the idea from Monopoly. I also wrote a book called The Bride Price, about 20 pages when I was in JSS 2. JSS is Junior Secondary School 2, second year in secondary school. That would be called GHS 2 in Ghana. My father was a good writer himself. In fact, he had written a book about the times before the colonialists came, about 300 pages worth, which he never really published because he was always apprehensive that someone will copy the book. But my father taught me about iambic pentameters, you know, a system of writing poems that basically counted the syllables of the your phrases so that they tend to create that rhythm in the poem. He made corrections to my book. He was quite impressed, but of course he found things to correct about it, and eventually I wrote the first version of my book in Jansi in the late 90s. It was later published. So I want you to cut me some slack. I wrote that book when I was a teenager, believe it or not. And I published it in 2010 because I felt I just had to get started on that journey of writing. And I published in 2010. We launched it in Lagos, right? And I remember quite a few people who were there. Yesterday, Olawale Ayuba was present in the live stream. He was also physically present along with many others in my life from Airtel Nigeria, from Presbyterian Church, Abuja Parish, from Feka Nigeria, from the Navy Town Secondary School, and so forth, who were there, who witnessed the launch of the book in 2011 thereabout. Now, fantasies are when we recall them in our adult life, we think about our own children. We all want our children to do better than we did. Sometimes we want children to do what we didn't do but wanted to do. And we do agree that sons must be greater than their fathers. However, we must not force them to live out our own fantasies. We must give them opportunities to advance further in life faster. Those are some of the topics I talked about in my book, If I Were to Live Again, which I wrote when I turned 40. We must give them opportunities to go farther, further, faster. And our children are not only biological children, they include those who are coming after us in this realm, whether they are juniors in the workplace, people who are mentoring, children in our society. In parenting, coaching, and writing, we create another generation greater than we are. We are working hard to give someone something we never had. And that's part of the challenge we're giving you today. I wrote my book, Career Growth in Information Technology, earlier this year. It came out of a place where I felt many of the technical people I have seen, worked with, watched over the years are people who are very good at what they do, but somehow unable to express it very clearly. People who are very good at what they do, but somehow unable to switch to something else when the need arises. Very good at what they do, but somehow stuck. And I wrote the book, Career Growth Strategies in Information Technology. Now, living again through our children is not just about comfort. It's also about perpetuating strong values in those we can influence. It's not just about the reputation of our family name. We don't do this in our family, blah, blah, blah. It's about shaping the society that our children will grow up in. It's not just about also the fastest way to escape the problem. It's important to be part of the solution, whether you've already jackpot or not. Think solution. Be solution oriented, because wherever you go, there'll be problems and you have to address them. It's not just about sustaining success, which means we're not just saying that if you haven't done too much, cringe and recoil into your cocoon. There's something to learn from failures as well. So never feel like you have nothing to pass on. Question is, what are you passing on? What are you passing on? The concept of children now highlights the point, the concept of marriage or the family unit as a fundamental unit of society. We talked about the concept of marriage, getting married or not. I got married at 35, right? I still wish I had done it earlier. My view, as I mentioned earlier, is that if you are going to do something, you better do it early enough in life. When you are young, we give you room to make mistakes, to recover, to grow. And you must have that growth mindset if you're going to thrive in this present world. Marriage has so many advantages when you enter it early. You learn with your spouse. You grow with your spouse. You participate in the growth, the development, the change, the transformation of your spouse. No one is perfect, right? No one is perfect, including you. Your spouse will change in many ways through your journey, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Your spouse may add weight, lose weight. She may not become taller without the shoulder pad and high heel shoes, but she may get a PhD and intimidate you with it. Or you may get a PhD yourself and feel that, oh, I'm so distant from this person intellectually. We all change over time, right? In some cases, you acquire new beliefs, right? You hear something from some powerful man of God and it shapes your thinking. One person is praying 24 hours, another person is reading books. It's a long journey and things are likely to change. And the truth is, sometimes you will have to be responsible for those changes, whether they are physical, mental, or spiritual changes. There is a lot of joy in being able to live through those changes, being able to participate in shaping the life, the growth, the maturity of another human being. And it has to be mutual. The photos in front of you illustrate these changes from a physical perspective, from very young to a little bit older, white, dark beard to white beard, from size 12 to size 14, back to size 12, and so forth. It's illustrative of the potential changes that could happen in a marriage union as you navigate the seasons. Now, you might be out there and there could be a variety of choices in front of you, a variety of options in front of you, a variety of experiences. There's a story told by Mike Murdoch. A couple walks down the aisle and all the single ladies are thinking in their hearts, I wish I was married. I wish that was me. Meanwhile, according to Mike Murdoch, the groom looks back into the crowd. He probably sees all the ladies in the crowd. And then he says to himself, freedom, sweet freedom. Many young men think they are free when they are single. The question is, freedom from what? Freedom to do what? I do agree that entering a relationship is taking up responsibility. But when we assume that by staying away from responsibility, we can play games with the life of another human being, with their bodies, and so forth, we are simply not being responsible, even in our singlehood. The design of this world is that we face the consequences of our actions one way or another. If freedom means fun with other people's bodies rather than time to secure and pursue your purpose, you may have to review your understanding of the universe, because we tend to pay for or face the consequences of our actions. Single people want to be free. Single people want to be married. Married people want to be free. Married people want to be single. It's all a loop in the cycle of life that draws attention to something deeper. Purpose. Why am I here? Why am I here? Let's talk a little bit more about marriage as sharing life and building love. Sharing life and building love. When you get married, you're getting married to someone. You're not going to be just looking at them. So it's not just about the way they look, or the chemistry, or the way their figure, their height. You're going to be living with someone. You're marrying someone you're going to be living with, not just looking at. It pays to hear this over and over again. You know, I give some examples of this living with. You may have heard the story of the toothpaste. Some people are free, sanguine, carefree, and they just squeeze that toothpaste from the middle. All they want is for the paste to come out of the tube. They're not interested in the shape, the beauty, the aesthetics of the tube. They just want the paste to come out of it. Some others are more meticulous with life. They like to squeeze the toothpaste from the bottom so that the shape, the aesthetics, the dimensions, and the articulation of the tube remains intact until they finish it. Now, if you're two of you are living together, the lady who says, I don't care about the shape of the tube, I just want to brush my teeth. And the guy who says that, look, it's important to keep this tube in order, right? You're probably going to have challenges with brushing your teeth in the morning. And that is a significant part of living life. You brush your teeth every single day. Now, if you are the kind of person who is kind of like particular about wearing slippers in the house, right? And you're living with someone who is not interested in slippers. The person is interested in tapping the current from the bare floor, whether the floor is dusty or otherwise, right? You're also going to have conversations around what are you going to be teaching your children? Wear slippers in the house or don't wear slippers in the house. The moment you get married, you're going to be dealing with diapers. Diapers are an important part of marriage. And if you're a man or a woman, you need to learn to handle diapers, whether they are as clean as this one looks, or they are a bit browny and, dotted with substances from the internal parts of your baby. So whichever it is, you have to deal with diapers. That's part of life. You have to deal with school fees receipts. So when you get married, you have a conversation that says to your wife, to your husband, to be, I want 3 children. No, I want 5. I want 7. I want 9. I want 12. See, no matter how many children you choose to have, I want to announce to you that every additional child comes with additional school fees receipts, which you have to live with. So that is, the joy of children is balanced by the responsibility of having them. Bad hair days. When you saw your wife the first time, she had a perfectly made, Brazilian hair or African hair or Indian hair. When you begin living with her, that is likely to change a bit on some days because life will happen. So in essence, chemistry and romance are only gateways. Love goes much deeper. Love is about commitment, not just cohesion. There's a lot more to think about in making the decision of a life partner, but it begins with the right mindset. I'm going to live with this person. I'm not just going to look at this person for the rest of my life. Marriage is about commitment beyond chemistry and cohesion. Very important points. Now let's talk about alternatives. I started a book called Alternatives to My Spouse sometime 2 years ago. I have not finished it. So maybe encourage me in the comments if you want me to finish that book. But let's watch this video very quickly.
Disneyland Paris in the Indomitable Hero Park promo.
Astronomer CEO Andy Byron has been removed from his post following his viral moment at a Coldplay concert. After he was seen dodging cameras when a Jumbotron showed him closely hugging a woman at the band's Massachusetts concert, leading frontman Chris Martin to joke that the pair were, quote, having an affair. Astronomer announced his decision to place Byron on leave. Writing in a July 18th statement on LinkedIn, co-founder and chief product officer Pete DeJoy is currently serving as interim CEO, given Andy Byron has been placed on leave. We will share more details as appropriate in the coming days. The company also shared that a formal investigation has been launched. Writing in a separate statement, Astronomer is committed to the values and culture that have guided us since our founding. Our leaders are expected to set the standard in both conduct and accountability. The company went on to clear up rumors about other employees being at the concert and if their CEO has publicly addressed the situation, explaining Alyssa Stoddard was not at the event and no other employees were in the video. Andy Byron has not put out any statement. Reports saying otherwise are all incorrect.
All right, so stolen water is sweet and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. Those are the words of King Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived or whoever lived in the ancient world, who had 1,000 women at his beck and call. The video you just watched is the video of a young or middle-aged CEO, Andy Byron, who was seeking alternatives to his spouse at his workplace. So getting married does not exclude you from irresponsibility, like we said earlier. You will always find someone taller, darker, handsomer, if you like, than your husband. You will also find bigger boobies, bums, or slightly softer voice in your workplace, in your travels, wherever. You will travel through life, take various jobs. If you want, you can still act like a single person, if freedom of that sort is your goal. But you must understand that sex is not equal to love. And sex is almost like food. There is no meal you will eat today that ensures that you are never hungry again. Chemistry and cohesion are part of marriage, but the real deal is commitment. The real deal is what? Commitment. All right. So we make choices. In marrying, we made a choice. We made an intentional choice. I want to live with you for the rest of my life. We must take responsibility for our choices. Your choice of a spouse must be intentional. The core drivers of your actions must be clear. And every decision requires that you take responsibility now and in the future. Why am I doing this? Where is this going? Am I driven by my emotions? Have I made a mistake? Ask these questions about your future spouses, the choice of your future spouse. Ask why, and take full responsibility for your actions. We took this photo with my 4-year-old last night, last night being the Saturday rather, Friday the 3rd of October. And I did a presentation of this on the 4th of October. You may already know that I've written 5 books, some of which I'm talking about in these broadcasts. Pictures are there and they're available on Amazon. And I've also promised that I can give you one of these 5 books if you make time to support my quest to back the founders of these NGOs whom we are featuring in these 5 days. So it's important that you take note of that benefit. We talked about faith, another side, another shade of reality. Another shade of reality. And some of the questions I have about my own faith. Why should someone think as critical as the salvation of our souls be the subject of heated debate over centuries? Shouldn't God's revelation of himself be so obvious, so clear as day, that if he were to judge us about our choices, we would be clearly guilty or clearly innocent? When we die, do we go to heaven, to hell, or do we come back through various cycles until we reach nirvana? And why are the near-death experiences so varied? Are people lying? Are people hallucinating? Or is there a reality out there that we can grasp or capture by hearing someone talk about them? Should we even trust these near-death experiences? And if we're questioning the authenticity of a holy book, how can we be sure of the answers we get back if those answers are derived from the book themselves? Is it possible to prove that the Bible is an accurate record of God's message to man without quoting from the Bible? Bottom line, birth, death, and sin are shared experiences. The first 2 are obvious. I added the third because it is indeed the basis of most of our laws in our nations. So what problem are we really trying to solve in our quest to explore, to inquire? Is it an intellectual problem? Or are we really looking for the redemption of our corrupt souls? To assume that we can easily answer these questions is stretching the limits of arrogance. People smarter than we are have contemplated for millennia the answers to some of these questions and more. But somehow we believe that, I believe, that inquiry is itself a form of worship. We stretch our minds by exploring the unsearchable recesses of an eternal being, of eternal things. Such inquiry should be genuine, a search for truth, rather than an attempt to dismiss phenomena that go beyond the boundaries of our known reality. You know, the universe is very intimidating. The Earth you see in the photo looks bigger because I put a yellow circle around it. It is part of a system called the solar system. And according to those who have explored those things anyway, the solar system is part of a Milky Way galaxy with over 100 billion stars, 100 billion. Our sun is just a medium-sized dwarf star. The universe, as we know it, is a fully expanding mass. It just keeps expanding with about 2 trillion galaxies currently. Why do we think our opinion of reality is of any consequence? Why? Even our instruments of inquiry, the things we use to find out what is the Euler constant, what is the acceleration due to gravity, what is, and all that, they are even flawed. We are constrained, confined to this small dot. And Peter had said yesterday that within this small dot, we are fighting for land, we're fighting for resources, we're building houses, accumulating wealth. Some people are posing on who is ruling the world. And some have come to you on Facebook or LinkedIn to ask you to join them in ruling the world. That's small dot. You see, our discoveries must humble us. They must teach us that there are definitely things we will never truly know, things that must be revealed or accepted. So the way I deal with these is to listen to those who are the masters, who have taken more time to study these matters at a deeper level than myself. And if you look at them, Chuck Missler, Michael Hazel, Mike Winger, Ken Ham, John Lennox, Ray Comfort, when they talk about these realities and they give us reason to believe, if you may call it that, they don't always agree with each other. But the fundamentals are compelling. The more I listen, the more it becomes obvious that the main objective is not really being able to grasp eternal truths with our finite minds, but the fact that searching itself is a form of worship. So don't discard the baby with the bath water. Find these men on the internet, listen intently. Don't dismiss the reality of these things. Now I'm going to come back to the story I started today's broadcast with, the occult and demons with an S. I started with a story of a friend of mine who had an encounter in the middle of the night, and he began praying, casting, binding, slapping, as all sorts of stuff. But you see, he later found out that he had left his window slightly open. The noise was the responsibility of the wind. I also started talking about cats and the fact that we had a large number of cats while growing up. Sometimes in the middle of the night, we would hear them disturb the whole neighborhood with howling noises from inside our roof. I later realized that unneutered cats often make loud yowling or crying sounds during the mating season, especially at night. There was a recent advert in the voice of Prophet Kofi Oduro in Ghana that scolds the businessman who fails to smile at his customers, telling him that the lack of growth in his business is not a spiritual problem, but a dental problem. It was, of course, an advert, but it's very insightful that many things we think are spiritual problems, like a window that is slightly left open, are actually human problems that we must address with the human point. At this point, let me just remind you that these 5 days, the whole point is to draw attention to the human problems that these friends of mine have been trying to solve with their time. From Prosper Afechi to Heather Beam, Yetunde Macaulay, Enifumi Ogbimi, Nuruddin Latte. And you can watch the interviews I had with them over the past 5 days on our channel, Illuminati Africa. I will implore you, I will encourage you, what other word can I use? Beg you to support them, partner with them, reach out to them, find them on the internet, and be part of the solutions, the human solutions they are providing on the earth. Now let's go back to the issue of demonology and the occult. I want to remind you of the Vikings, very popular and very powerful, tribe or set of tribes, the Northmen or the Norsemen, all from Scandinavia. They had concepts that are so powerful in literature right now: Valhalla, Ragnarok, Uppsala, and so forth, which you probably want to explore. So for those of you in Eastern Nigeria and other parts of Africa who think Christianity came to destroy your customs, you are not alone. Be advised. You are not alone. Scandinavia had Odin, Thor, Freya as dominant figures just about 1,000 years ago. Human sacrifice was said to have been practiced in Uppsala. Conquest was a thing for them. It was about glory, about killing enough people to get into Valhalla. and to dine with Odin. Did they get results from their practices? They had practices. They had fetishes they used to do, right? They had, people who used to give them prophetic insight, so to speak. They did get some results. But you see, these systems were wiped out almost by human institutions, the church particularly. Because in reality, this world belongs to man. And you see, whatever entity that wants to operate from another realm in this present world needs the agency of a man. That is why those who still invoke these powers, invoke demons, invoke spirits, negative spirits, they must do so. Those spirits depend on them to kind of invoke them to influence anything in this world. Otherwise, they will have run rampage. So in essence, when I speak lightly, if you may say so, about the window that is flipping, about the toothpaste, smile, and spiritual, I'm not saying there's no influence of satanic activity on the earth. I'm saying that we need to reflect. How was demonology practiced by the Lord Jesus? When he tells us you shall cast out demons, is he talking about imaginary demons or preempting demons? Let's pray that any demon that is doing such and such. In his case, in many cases, there were actually literal demons in the bodies of people whom he asked to leave, and the evidence of their leaving was obvious. Now, when I was much younger, about maybe 1992, we had a funeral at my grandfather's house. My grandfather's funeral at my hometown, and it was being done at my father's house. About 3 a.m. in the morning, I decided that I would take a walk around the village so that I could stay awake, because I challenged myself that I did not want to sleep throughout the night. It was a wake keep. When I took that walk and I got to the other side of the village, I saw an entity approaching me about 7 feet tall, 7 feet tall. It just had the shape. It appeared to be holding a lantern by the side. And as the more it approached me, I felt it ought to be getting clearer. So, because in my heart, I was wondering, who is as tall as this in this village? That was the thought in my heart. Who is this tall in this village? And as it approached me, there seemed to be a light by the side. And I was expecting the figure to get clearer because there was light, right? And as I approached. So as I was contemplating this, the closer it got, it wasn't getting clearer. It was just like this shape with light by the side. And I said to myself, okay, I'm going to greet. If I get a response, then I know it's human. If I don't get a response, I'll know it's something else. As soon as I made that decision, the entity appeared to turn to the left into the nearby path. Now, there was no path there. There was no road there. It just appeared to turn, really. And then I felt the shiver all through my being. And the first thought that came to my mind was run. Incidentally, at that point, a dog passed by me, was run. But I said to myself, if this entity was not a physical entity, my running will not make a difference. So I still continued to walk and then got back to the house in the middle of my fear, if I may say so. 3 times in my house in the village. My house in the village is a 2-story building, or my father's house is a 2-story building with a penthouse. And we would sleep on the 2nd floor. On that 2nd floor in the room, in the middle of the night, back in then we used to have a cult called Oboni, a young men who are coming of age. And sometimes they would practice their arts outside in front of in my hometown, the village, and they're singing songs, playing drums, etc. And we were invited to join once or twice, but I wasn't interested in joining. Middle of the night. Those practices went on, and I'm sure there are secrets in that space, right? I mean, every occult system has those secrets. But it points back to the fact that it takes someone here on the earth to invoke an entity elsewhere in another realm to manifest here. That story is that 3 times during my stay in that house, once or twice, I would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of marching. Zoom, 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 zoom. I know many people won't get to this point of the video. This is where the secrets are. So I would hear those sounds marching on top of the penthouse. It was like inexplicable. There was no way this was real, but I was hearing the sounds. I was hearing the sounds. 3 different occasions. On one of those occasions, I decided to go up to the penthouse in the middle of the night. I used to do those kinds of things. And when I went up to the penthouse, I peeped out. There was no one there but one person. So I'll pause there. The rise of mental blocks. Now, the submission I've made today is not a denial, as you've heard from my previous story, of the existence of supernatural phenomena outside our control. And those phenomena have been in existence in many civilizations, past, present, and future. What I rather would call attention to is the fact that sometimes what we experience is not as it seems. We create our own imaginary demons. A little education, like what happened at Uppsala, and converted the city from a fetish-loving place to a brilliant city that we are now traveling to from our beloved Africa. A little education is liberating, like the understanding of unneutered cats. A little education is liberating, but that education is even mental, is both mental and spiritual. So we need to ensure that we are not in a bondage of our own making. Not in a bondage of our own making. If you do want to learn more about the unseen realm, I want to recommend Michael Hazer's book, The Unseen Realm. There are quite a few videos he has made about the unseen realm, how they came about, and how to relate with them or deal with them in the context of the present world. Our civilization does not remove the unseen realm. At the same time, we must separate ourselves from just making things up and thinking and slowing ourselves down in this world, right? Thinking that we are under the influence of demonic activity. So my final note, and the final note, if I may say so, is remember our partners. Send your gifts here. That is your birthday gift to me. My real birthday is on the 6th of October, which is tomorrow. If you want to send me anything, send it to them. Make life happen for someone. Use your time productively. Participate in a purpose that is greater than you. Raise another generation that will thank you for being here. On that note, thank you very much for staying with me. Thank you for the 5 days. And thank you to my friends, Heather, Uniforme, Prosper, Yetunde, and Wahab, who spent time talking with me on Iwinati Africa. I deeply, deeply appreciate you. And I want to ask you to share this video if you happen to get to this point already. You are amazing if you're watching this point. And I want to thank you for being there. All the best and have a wonderful week.